In the last few months, I've had success and breakthroughs when it comes to understanding how to utilize artificial intelligence for high end financial advisors, primarily to do two things. One is save massive amounts of time, especially when it comes to preparing for client progress meetings. But the second thing that we've had a breakthrough on is how to utilize AI to come up with even more sophisticated, what I would call impressive action items and recommendations for affluent, ideal clients. I have conversations every day with high end financial advisors. That's who I work with. But I had a conversation today that I thought we don't talk about this in these videos very much as far as AI. I thought, let's break it down. I need to share with you what the state of the art is with AI right now. I need to share some intellectual shortcuts that I think will save you a lot of time and aggravation if you're a high end financial advisor. I need to explain to you what I'm noticing when it comes to highly skilled, highly experienced financial advisors as what not to do when you're trying to utilize AI in its current state to deliver better advice to your clients. Let me just talk for a minute about the best use cases right now. Your first point in the journey is to figure out which AI to use. There are several. So, flashback a year ago, my team came to me, suggested, Mark, you really should look at this AI. We're using it behind the scenes to do technical things. I'm not talking about anything to do with financial advisory, but my team was using AI to write code, do things behind the scenes on our websites, things like that. And I thought, to me, it felt like when the internet first came on the scene. So I'm old. I'll give you a comparison. Back when the internet was brand new, I'd have friends, other financial advisors like me, who would ask me, have you checked out I'd say, what do you mean? And they'd say, surfing. Have you been surfing on the internet? There's all kinds of like fun and interesting web pages. Of course, it was all new back then. I remember telling my friends, who's got time to surf the internet? No, I'm not doing that because I don't have a lot of free time. At the time, I was putting in 80, 90-hour weeks serving 1,242 clients at my firm. That's a whole different story. So I streamlined that business, but it wasn't to surf the internet. I'll tell you that for sure. I was looking for tools, and that's what the internet is. That's what AI is. That's what any software is. I'm looking for tools that can help me be a better financial advisor. In the case of AI, the two use cases that I'm looking for when I'm investigating all this is, does it save time? And I don't mean just a little time. Like I'm looking for, if I'm going to use AI and we're going to use any kind of cool new tool, it better save a ton of time. That's the use case that I was looking for. And then the second use case is, I know what clients expect. I know what the more successful, the more affluent, ideal clients expect. And they expect brilliant advice. They expect really impressive, above average recommendations. If they wanted mediocre recommendations or just boilerplate recommendations, they could go anywhere. Yeah, they could go to a young financial advisor that doesn't have much experience, hasn't been around the block with wealthy people. Therefore, you get what you would expect with a novice. You get boilerplate routine recommendations. What affluent clients are really looking for is, can I plug in to a skilled, experienced financial advisor? And does that show up in their recommendations? Am I getting, let's call it impressive, far above average action items and recommendations to implement that will help me accelerate my goals or take advantage of planning opportunities that I would have never thought of without hiring a skilled advisor? So those are the only two use cases I was looking for initially when I started looking at AI. Does it save massive amounts of time? If not, pitch it, just figure the technology's not quite ready for this. Or does it elevate the level of advice that we're giving to our clients? And in certain areas, absolutely yes. That was the most surprising thing to me this last 12 months is in certain specific situations, AI saves tons of time, hours of time in some cases. And AI, if you use it correctly, I'll give you some of the tips of the road here on this, but does it elevate the quality and the quantity of advice that you're providing to your clients? And the answer is yes on both. So let me start by saying it is not ready for prime time if somebody is thinking that I can get AI, ChatGPT or Claude or any of these is the state of the art to where let's just take it worst case scenario. Can a client talk to ChatGPT, get like higher level of advice that they will trust to implement their financial objectives and to accelerate their progress along the way? And the answer is no. Not to mention that, but for the types of clients that my advisors are looking for, including myself, you're looking for financial delegators that are not looking to do it themselves. As a matter of fact, that just the opposite. An ideal client for the advisors I work with are financial delegators who are passionate about their goals. They value the advice of someone that they can trust as long as they're worthy of trust. Bill Backrack, my business coach, used to say that a do-it-yourselfer asks themselves, why would I pay anyone anything to do something that I could do for myself? And he would go on to say the financial delegator has a great answer for that question. A financial delegator would say, why would I do anything on my own that I could possibly hire someone else to do for me? Because I have things in my life more important than money. And I am trying to create time to go focus on those things that matter most to me in life: family, friends, physical fitness, faith. The list of things that matter to people is quite long. And they're not looking to take on a new chore, or even if they've been managing their money, there are many successful, affluent, ideal clients that the problem is they can't find somebody that they can trust, or they can't find somebody that is as good as they are, in their opinion, and a variety of things. But the point is, if they could find somebody that's worthy of trust, let's say was better than they are at doing all of this financial stuff. Not everybody is looking for that who are multimillionaires, but I can tell you this, those who are looking for a financial advisor like that, even if they're doing it themselves now, there are more of them out there than you could possibly serve in 10 lifetimes. The quality of financial advice is really not that high if we're talking about the financial advisors that the multimillionaires in your community are interviewing, trying to assess whether they want to work with them or not. So the opportunity is right for you to plug into this. All I'm saying is that AI is not ready to give them advice, and maybe it will be. But even then, the human factor is the critical one here, that the more affluent and the more successful the client, they've already figured out computers and AI are really good at mechanical things. But when you come to problems that don't just involve money and money management, for example, I had a client come to me one time. We had a regular client progress meeting. She came to the meeting and said, I have bad news. And I was like, oh my gosh, what? And she said, our daughter is serious about this boy. They're 19 and she's talking marriage. And the problem is he's a drug dealer and he's trying to get out of it. But we are afraid that he's just dating her, wants to marry her because we have millions of dollars. So if she marries him, I think our business is at risk. I, of course, am worried about my daughter, but this is becoming a financial issue, to which I agreed. Thankfully, those of you thinking about this are thinking, "Oh, yeah, there are estate planning and other tools that we can deploy to shield the client wealth from a situation like that." But that's not the point. Do you think there'll ever be a time in history? I don't care if AI becomes smarter than we are. Do you think there'll ever be a time in history where a client like that look in the eye of the AI and trust them with a situation like that? Would they be inclined emotionally to listen to the advice from a machine? Just call me skeptical on that one. Whatever the case, we're talking decades from now for that to even be an issue. The issue for now, is there a way to plug into AI in a way that saves you a ton of time and increases the quality and the quantity of the advice that will knock your client's socks off? And the answer to both is yes. So I wanted to go through, those are the two use cases, saving time and giving better advice. But I want to walk through the three applications that we've built for our clients that I would encourage you to go check out and try it yourself. Two of the things that we've cracked the code on in the last few months are related to client service. So it's all about providing better service and quicker service to clients. Okay. One of the three issues that we are really excited about and seem to be working tremendously is client acquisition. So let me walk through them one by one. I'll try to give you tips along the way of how to get the GPT to do what I'm describing for you. Okay, the first client service issue that AI is excellent at are back office operations. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If you're a retail financial advisor like me and like all the advisors that I work with, then that means you work with individuals and families, either you alone or maybe you're with a company, but you are in charge as the lead advisor for your client families. You are responsible for both delivering the service to the clients and you're responsible for going out and getting new clients. So you're responsible for both client acquisition and client service. But when it comes to client service, I break down the operation in two ways. Client service in the way I'm talking about now is business operations and just general organization of the operation. AI is great with that. For that, we have created 5 tools in our firm that we share with financial advisors to get their back office operations running like a Swiss watch. If your clients are going to be impressed, your back office organization needs to be running like a well-oiled machine. So we've created 5 tools. I've gone through them in other videos, but basically it's interaction logs so that the left hand always knows what the right hand's doing in your operation. They're not sitting there in the dark, not knowing what's happening. You've got a method of documenting processes. You've got a method of solving problems. You've got a method of providing weekly status updates to make sure that everybody on the team knows which projects are on track and off track. And if a project gets off track, what are we doing to get back on track? So suffice to say, I've got these 5 tools. They've been working great for me and for all the advisors I've worked with for the past 20 years. We share these in an analog form. It used to be you'd create a document. In the really old days, you'd print it out and you'd fill out the exercise with pen and paper. In the last 20 years, you create a document online and you go through these 5 tools. Anyway, it's an analog way of doing it. So we sat down and we asked AI, can you help us replicate these tools, but can you make it easier and save time for whoever it is in the organization that's responsible for all of these back office operations? Usually we call the role an administrative manager, but you may call this an office manager or a chief operating officer, something like that. But we have converted all of these tools into what we call our AI assistants. And that's the first tip I wanted to share with you. The way to think of AI, at least in its current stage, is as a person, as an assistant. Now, we know it's not a person. It's not even thinking. It's a large language model, and it's designed to interact in a very lifelike way. But it's funny, over the last year, when I've introduced these tools to our clients, very high-end financial advisors, we'll be on a Zoom call and I'll say, ask our AI assistant for solving problems what they recommend to do in this situation. We call ours Chad. So just ask what Chad thinks you should do. Then you'll notice the advisor raise their voice and start talking in a very stilted way. The advisor will say, what my problem is, they raise their voice. It's almost like they're talking to a deaf foreigner that doesn't speak English. They raise their voice like they're talking to an idiot. They tell me later, I go, why did you do that? Why did you raise your voice and start sounding weird? And they'd say, I feel like I'm talking to a toaster. I didn't know how to act. And I said, in the future, picture this as your assistant. You're paying them So you can be very candid. And it's when you're talking to them, and I don't mean typing, I mean talking. When you're having a conversation with Chad, pretend instead of talking to me, Chad is sitting right next to me and you're talking to Chad instead of me. So that's my first piece of advice, that you need to treat the AI like a person. Not that it is a person in any way, shape, or form, but just because that's the way we think. If you can envision this as a conversation with a person, you'll start opening up and telling Chad what you are concerned about and just sharing, here's why I think it's not working. And here's what I think's going on. What do you think? And then you'll get on a roll. At that stage, you'll be shocked what Chad comes up with. So tip number one, talk to AI like it's an employee that you trust. So the second client service application that we've had stunning results with are organizing client problems into quick action plans. Let me give you an example. So I started off just skeptical that the AI could envision the realistic day to day significant financial issues faced by a multimillionaire family. So I started off by asking Chad, list for me in multiple categories some of the realistic significant financial issues that you think they face. And I loaded it up with a bunch of information. I loaded it up with my ideal client profile. I loaded it up with a lot of demographic information about these types of clients. And then I asked it to list significant financial issues, just hypothetical. I told it to just fabricate a bunch of them because I wanted to test to see if it was in tune with the way multimillionaires think. I was curious if they would recognize problems that multimillionaire clients would recognize as well. Matter of fact, I said, limit your situations to significant financial issues that are big enough that a do-it-yourselfer multimillionaire, that if in each of these situations you fabricate that if it was a real situation, even if they don't like financial advisors, they still might reach out to a professional just to pay them to help them resolve this issue. Let me just read one of the significant financial issues that Chad came up with, and I'll let you decide if this is something that sounds realistic. And I'm reading precisely what the AI gave me. Chad always starts off with the client name, and he came up with a bunch of hypothetical client names. Here we go. Let me read it to you. Samantha and Darren Stevens. Darren received a $1.5 million severance package from leaving his executive role and used part of it to pay off their second home. Samantha realized too late that this triggered a hefty early withdrawal penalty on one of their retirement accounts. Oops. Now they're facing an unexpected $200,000 tax bill and urgently need advice to avoid further penalties. All right, you tell me, is that realistic? I thought so. I thought that did it great. Let me read another one. I'm just going to go. He came up with dozens of these. Let me just pick one that I haven't read. Okay, client Laura and Rob Petrie. Laura's family farm is worth $5 million, but it's highly illiquid, and their son is pressuring them to keep it in the family. Meanwhile, Rob wants to sell the land to fund their retirement. They're struggling to find a way to balance family dynamics with their financial needs. That sounds like a significant financial issue that even a do-it-yourselfer might reach out to a professional. Let me give you one more, and then I'll just move on with the tip that I've got for you. All right, the client, Jeannie and Tony Nelson. Jeannie recently decided to sell her boutique hotel business after receiving an unsolicited offer of $15 million. However, Tony feels the deal is moving too fast, and neither of them understands the tax implications or how to negotiate terms like non-competes and seller financing. They recognize they need skilled advisor to help them structure the sale and plan for life after the business. I'll end it there, but look, when in 10 seconds, Chad generated 50 situations just like that and categorized them in terms of what type of problem it is, I thought, okay, I'm sold. You get it. Now, let me pause and give you another tip. So how did it get so close to all of this? There is a way, and as I said, we focus on ChatGPT, and I'm sure this is true with all the others as well, but you can preload ChatGPT with information. In my case, I uploaded all kinds of stuff about client demographics. I uploaded our ideal client profile. I uploaded demographics about the size of our average client accounts. How many of them own businesses? What are the value of the businesses? I uploaded financial plans that we've created for our top 3 clients. You get the idea. Did you know that you can preload a GPT with all this information, and that creates a permanent tool that you just save that link because you can go back with that link with a new client and a new situation, and it remembers all that stuff. So you just pick it up right there and you start resolving the issue. There's no way he would have come up with anything close to this if I hadn't preloaded Chad with all this demographic information. As a result, as you saw, it comes up with very realistic problems. So the next thing, and I had to play around with this, but I created a specific tool that was preloaded with the way to think about this, the way I would explain it to someone else on my team. If a problem like this exists, what do you do? I have taught my team. First thing you do is we need to create a checklist of items still needed from the client. Based on whatever the situation is, we very quickly need to start working with the client to get any information or documents that we're lacking in the file. So my question was in my head, can we get AI to generate a checklist of items still needed from the client? Again, the state of the art, you would think it could just figure out whether we already have this stuff or not. It's not, or at least we can't figure out how to make it do that. But what we can do is give that list to my administrative manager who can go into our client folders, remove from the checklist everything that we've already got. So then what's left? In 5 seconds, I got a list of items still needed that's in a Word document form that I could attach to an email, send to the client, but we've removed everything we currently have. So what remains are the items that we don't have that we still need from the client. Okay, that was impressive. I mean, got that in 5 seconds. So the second thing I tell my team when a problem like this comes over the transom, and I've trained my administrative manager, I've trained all my subject matter experts on our team. If a client calls in with one of these problems like we just described, second thing is we need to put together before we talk to the client a list of questions so that we just have one call, not 5, to try to get our mind around all the elements of this problem. So I asked Chad, can you create a sequence of questions that I can use as talking points when I'm on the phone with the client so that I don't miss anything and nothing falls through the cracks? And I want you to create 2 conversations. I'll do it all in one call, but I want you to give me a list of basic information in sequence that I need to ask the client about. And these are things that are just the details or the facts of the situation on the ground, just to make sure I understand what's going on. So Chad did that in 5 seconds. The second series of questions, and I explained this and preloaded it into the tool. I said, the second thing we need on that front is we need to understand what the client is thinking and feeling about this, so that we may have our own opinions about how to resolve or address this issue or eliminate this problem or whatever it is. But what we don't know is what the clients are thinking about it. So I asked Chad, create a second series of talking points, questions that I can use as an outline that will allow me at the end to fully understand what our client expects in terms of the best outcome or anything that they're thinking and feeling about this issue that we need to know from a planning standpoint before we begin our work. The GPT spit that out in 10 seconds, all that stuff. And I think you would agree that saves time. Normally what happens, and I've been in this business 40 years, a situation like that comes across the transom. A client calls in, either shares the situation with our administrative manager, who frankly knows the clients better than anyone. But even if they're talking to one of our subject matter experts, like our estate planning lawyer or our tax accountant, it doesn't matter. The client just shares this problem with anybody on our team. In the old days, we would create what we would call a huddle. We don't like meetings, but okay. So we would have a meeting, a huddle, where real quick, like 15, 20 minutes, let's get all this stuff mapped out because we need to get a checklist to the client of items we need, not stuff we already have, but stuff we still need. You get the idea. So we eliminated a huddle. And this is something that from the time the call came in from the client to the time we are turning around, providing an email checklist, and we're scheduling a call, usually with me, to go through the problem in a little more detail, where I'm going through the checklist of questions in sequence to make sure I understand exactly what's going on and what the client wants as an outcome. I think you would agree that results in a more impressed client, the speed at which we respond. And I could share the data we have on this, but ideal clients value responsiveness very high. The idea of getting a call back and an email in less than an hour, or certainly less than 2 hours, is very impressive to ideal clients. And that's what we're going for. The more a client is impressed, the more they're likely to provide referrals. And that's the bottom line. Okay, so let me shift focus and finish up with client acquisition. I can tell you from personal experience, if a financial advisor is listening to this, the only thing that might get their attention with AI is if there was a way to harness this tool to help with client acquisition. At least in my mind, as an active financial advisor, I am consumed with where's my next client going to come from? That's represents new revenue. Let me tell you the breakthrough we've had with client acquisition. And I'll admit, we're still working on some of this and we're tweaking it. But for what I'm about to describe for you, we've turned the corner and we're releasing these tools to our clients immediately. I'm just telling you that you can do what I'm about to go through with you right now. And it works great. So the next tip on AI is there's two ways to utilize it. And I'll tell you what I mean in a minute. You can talk to AI, at least ChatGPT. And when I say talk, you can have a conversation and it will talk right back with you, just like an assistant. The other experience with the same ChatGPT is that you have the same conversation, but you're typing. So you type in a question, it types responses, and so forth. And you go back and forth. Now, I thought at the beginning, I'll figure out which I like better. And sometimes I like to talk things out. Sometimes I like to type things out. It helps me think. You will do the same, by the way. You'll figure out how to use these tools. And that's the great thing about AI, in my opinion. Every advisor is going to find new ways to use these tools that are unique to them. But I'm talking about myself right now. For me, when I'm working on something organized and a tedious, complex problem, I like to talk. I like to see it unfold in type. And when the AI responds, I want to see what it says. I want to see what it says. You can, even when you're typing, you can get it to read out loud. And I do that sometimes too. But I'm just saying, for more complex problems, I tend to like to type it out. You can decide for yourself when you use which. Now, when do I like to talk? I like to talk when I'm just spitballing or brainstorming. Think of it as I have a couch in my office. I go lay down on my couch. I close my eyes. I turn on Chad and we just start talking. I close my eyes and we start brainstorming. That's how I like to use the voice. Now, there are two applications that work very well for the voice, and they both have to do with client acquisition. So at the beginning of this journey, when I first started looking into AI, I had just moved from San Diego to where I am now, which is Fort Worth, Texas, which is where I'm from, Texas. So I was very skeptical that AI could do anything to help with client acquisition, but I thought I'll give it a try. So I go lie down, close my eyes, turn on Chad, and I say, hey, Chad, do you know who this is? Yeah, it's Mark. Do you know what I do? Yes, you're a financial advisor. Okay, good. So I'm a financial advisor. What you don't know is I just moved to Fort Worth, Texas. And what I need is I want to meet a lot of small business owners. Can you give me some advice on how to rub elbows with lots of small business owners here in Fort Worth, since I'm new to the area? To which Chad said, Yeah, here are 5 organizations where small business owners gather in Fort Worth and they get together on a regular basis. They all have a little bit different purpose, the organization, but these are the top 5. And so I focused on one of them just because I was testing this out. And I said, so on this one in particular, give me an example, Chad. How would I use this organization to get to know small business owners that are highly successful? And Chad says, they have a few events where all you do is go mingle with other members. And there's one coming up in 2 weeks, but that's where I would start. And I was like, that's a pretty good, thinking to myself, that's not a bad idea. So tell me, Chad, do I have to call someone or do I just show up? And he explained that on this particular event, it's only to members. So I would need to join the organization. No big deal. I asked him what those membership levels were and he explained it to me. Okay, that's fine. Can I just show up? And they said, no, it's RSVP. They've got a limit on how many can attend. So you'll need to call in. But even if you RSVP the day before, you could probably get in, no problem. And this is AI telling me all this. I said, well, let's say I go to this event. I'm an introvert. Tell me how I break the ice with these people that I don't know. What do I say? Give me examples. So Chad's gave me a series, like 10 like icebreaker questions, such as, oh, hey, I'm new to the organization. How long have you been a member? And what kind of business are you in? So I looked at it and I smiled and I told Chad, these are fine, but I think I've got this early questions wired. I think I can handle those. What I want you to do is give me some kind of next level conversation openers that breach the topic and encourage them to start telling me a little bit more about their business on an in-depth level. And the best case scenario would be if they could just share any significant financial issues or problems that they're currently facing or something like that. To which Chad gave 10 great pieces of advice on 10 things to do that. And I looked at those responses and heard him say them. And I switched from voice. I got up and I came back to my desk and I pulled up the conversation. So the tip here is if you have a conversation with ChatGPT, at least, you can go back to your computer, pull up ChatGPT, and there is the record of that conversation. It's typed and you can switch to type. So now I'm engaged and I typed in, I said, Chad, I love all these. These are really good. And because I've done this and am successful, I was literally just assessing the quality of the advice. So far, it was very good advice. So I said, give me 20 more examples just like that, but different. And he cranked out 20 more. I said, give me 30 more. And he gave me 30 more. All I'm saying is I proved that you can use this to help with client acquisition. Now, granted, I did preload several things. Again, the ideal client profile. I uploaded what we're looking for in terms of the type of client and so forth. So I uploaded quite a bit of information in advance, but I think you'll agree that's pretty impressive that you can take someone skeptical like me and actually take them down a productive route when it comes to where to go to meet your ideal clients in a high concentration and what to say to get the relationship going. I thought that was great. And then the last and final thing that I was going to tell you that has worked great is practicing conversations with either clients or potential clients. And I'll save a lot of time by saying I uploaded lots of demographics about clients of this type so that in advance, Chad knows what an ideal client looks like. And in the case of this, I've preloaded it with the instructions that I want to practice a conversation with you and I want you to play the client. I want to be the advisor. I'm responding to your questions. Now, for this, I'll use an example of an initial client interview. So I told Chad when I meet with a client for the very first time, I get to a point in the conversation where I tell the client, we've come to the point in our time together where you get to decide whether you want to hire me to create this strategy for you. Then it's up to the client to take the ball and ask me questions. Now, the thing that I knew that the advisors that I've tested this with did not know, what I had uploaded in advance was this potential client had a bad experience with a financial advisor 10 years ago. They promised all this stuff up front, never called them, very bad service, not responsive when they really did need service. And to top it all off, made a tax error. It resulted in a $40,000 tax surprise. And then they had the gall, after we fired him and moved everything to Charles Schwab, they had the gall to call back 2 years later and ask for a meeting, to which I said, go pound sand. So this actually is a real situation that a friend of mine had with an advisor. So I just preloaded Chad saying, you're a skeptical client, but you do meet the ideal client profile and you would like to delegate to an advisor, but you're just somewhat skeptical that an advisor that you can trust exists. And so when you ask questions, it's okay to be skeptical, but don't be rude and listen carefully to the response. But I ended the preloading by saying, at the end of all your questions, you can decide if there's been a compelling response to all your questions, you can hire me. If I have not satisfactorily responded to all your questions, then I instructed it to say, I'll think about it, which I thought is funny. That's just a way of saying, no, I'll think about it. So we started playing it. Now, I also uploaded 10 pivotal questions that I've been doing this for 40 years. I know that there are 10 very common questions, like what does this cost, or how does this work, or let's say I hire you, what's the process? So I uploaded 10 questions and I told Chad, just shuffle on these 10 questions until you've got all your questions answered. That was a trip. If you haven't had a conversation with a fabricated client that is a little pissed off, and when you give a really good answer, they go, that's impressive, but I've heard that before. How do I know you'll actually deliver on that? They're a little bit saucy and it's a weird experience. But imagine this, and this is how we've utilized it with our clients. Let's say you have an important initial client interview with someone that is a big potential ideal client. Say you're meeting with this person and it's scheduled for 2 weeks from today. Let's say during your downtime, and I'm saying when you're driving or commuting in the car, or you're washing dishes, or you're walking the dog, let's say anytime you have 20 minutes, you pull this up and preload it with this conversation and just start practicing. What if you practiced that conversation twice a day for 2 weeks? And when you met with the client, you had practiced this conversation 28 times, not a cakewalk. These questions are tough and it's looking for compelling responses. The results we've had from this are just nothing short of phenomenal. It's the kind of thing, it's almost like a magic trick. The first time you go through this experience, you'll ask yourself, did that just really happen? But that's what's possible with AI right now. And so I encourage you to just pick one of them. I would recommend ChatGPT, at least at the time of this recording. It's inexpensive and you can just give it a try. And I would say try both the voice and the typing. See which one you like best. And don't forget to preload it with certain situations, because it honestly works best when it understands a little bit about the background before you start the conversation. But I hope this was helpful. My goal here was just to give you an insight into the state of the art of what AI can do and what it can't do, and inspire you to check into it. And I hope you do. Take care. See you in the next video.